Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle. I've been looking forward to introducing today's guest since the day we met a few months back in December at a New England Podcasters Group meetup. Joining me today is Shaun Zetlin. He's a man who spent more than 2 decades helping people build physical strength and then went on to continue to evolve his work into something much deeper by exploring how emotional fitness shapes the way we think, feel, and ultimately show up for our lives. Shaun's a master fitness trainer, author, motivational speaker, and continuing education provider for fitness professionals through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. He's owned and operated a health and fitness business in the New York City metro area for over 22 years and is a 5-time Best of Brooklyn personal trainer. Shaun's also the author of the Push-Up Progression book series featured by Discovery Channel and Yahoo Health, and he's currently on tour for his latest book, Emotional Fitness, which challenges the traditional definition of strength by inviting us to train our emotional lives with the same intention, consistency, and honesty that we bring to training our bodies. And honesty that we bring to training our bodies. Shaun, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here today.
It's an honor. Thank you for having me.
I was about to tell you before we hit record that one of the reasons I was really interested, besides your work, in bringing you on the show is that I think you break the norms of what many of us would perceive when we think about a typical physical fitness kind of award-winning personal coach, that kind of thing. So I'm so interested in hearing feedback from the listener and getting you in front of people and sort of having them challenge their own perceptions around that. So I'm glad to bring you here today. And I think it would be great if we could kick off and set the stage with maybe some highlights from your background that, in my opinion, sort of set you up perfectly for the work you're doing today.
Thank you. And thank you again for having me here. I'm such a fan of the show. And so I go back to my childhood. I think that's really important for everybody's origin story. And I think about, when I was a little boy at 4 or 5 years old and, being at summer camp or being at gym class and wanting to catch a ball, and I just couldn't do it. I mean, physically speaking, I had club feet. Shout out to Tom Brady for the New Englanders. But I had club feet. I had these gross motor skills where I would want to so badly. I could see the ball coming and I would have so much anticipation, so much excitement. And my brain and body could not make that connection. My nervous system wouldn't allow me to catch that ball. And so I had to work really hard at that. And of course, that led to a lot of bullying. I tell this one story, which Marianne knows, back in December when we first met, but how I was in summer camp and it was kickball, and the counselor, to his credit at first, really, again, just gently rolled the ball towards me. And I had one of those Charlie Brown moments where I literally fell on my back and all the kids laughed at me and the counselor started laughing, and the counselor who threw the ball called me a loser. And then other counselors started laughing. And it was just sort of this horrific, sad moment for me. And it really set up other stages where I was certainly bullied for, I think the way I looked. I think I always was going to be sort of a sensitive, kind individual, even without some of this trauma. I think I was just born to be an empath and want to help people. But this sort of just rejuvenated myself to know, okay, I have to heal myself before I can heal others. And then my dad was a professional bodybuilder, and he did this in the 50s and the 60s. And so then it wasn't as mainstream. And so we had a gym in our basement. I was very lucky that we had all this equipment. And to his credit, he never forced me to work out. But at that time I was overweight and again, had all these, issues when it came to these gross motor skills. And I asked him to help me and he showed me the ropes. And I remember, if you can picture it, it's the bench press. Everyone can picture what a bench press looks like. And it's such a masculine exercise. And I was anything but then, of course, as I mentioned. And he's standing over me. And he was so worried. We're in the basement, it's cold, and we're in this like blue puffy jacket, like I'm about to go play in the snow. And I'm literally laughing, Marianne. It was the first time in my life that I did something physical where I started laughing. In other words, it gave me so much joy.
Love that.
And my dad, to his credit at the time, was like, "Stop laughing, you're going to hurt yourself." And he was so worried, like a worried father. And I understand why. But in my mind, I couldn't believe I was doing something physical well. And that was just it. Like it just clicked. It wasn't, me versus, another player, like in a particular sport. It was really me versus me.
Mm.
And for the first time in my life, I didn't know that fitness or anything physical could be that way. And then it was all about, let's take it one step further, which was all about if I can work with myself and heal myself and be my biggest fan and set myself up for big success, I can be good at things that are physical versus if I'm competing with somebody else.
Did you connect those dots back then, or did that come much later? Because I was going to ask you about sort of, it's an unlikely path, some might say, where you ended up, right?
Yes.
Based on your 6 or 7-year-old self versus where you ended up today.
Right.
Did you, in that moment when you realized, wow, I'm having fun doing something physical and this doesn't feel so horrible, did you connect all that, or was it years later?
It's a great question. I think it was a little bit of both, to answer the question properly. Because for me, I think when you're looking around, and I think you become very self-aware at maybe 6 or 7 or 8 years old. I kind of see it in my little girls right now. They're aware of themselves and aware of other people in the classroom. And I was aware that I wasn't like the other boys in the sense of I was always a very good artist. I was always very good artistically, and I don't want to take that for granted. That was a blessing that I got from my mom and her father. But when you're, 6, 7, 8, and a little bit older, even being an artist as a little boy, it's not really great. It doesn't give you any props, So it's great that I could draw a Disney character, but it didn't do much for my confidence, put it that way.
Yeah, no one cared.
No one cares, exactly. And so for me, I think, it was, wow, so I'm doing something physical. I'm laughing. This is incredible. I can't believe I'm actually in my body. I can't believe I'm actually body aware. The sense of feeling strong was really something that I never experienced until that actual moment. But then I also realized something else where, okay, if I'm outside my dad's gym, what does that look like to the outside world? In other words, I have to be also very body aware when I'm outside of my dad's gym. And what does that look like for confidence? Because I think then in a very subconscious way, I was starting to build on the nervous system. Because when you think about anxiety or depression or some of the things that we all go through at times, I mean, that's dysregulation of the nervous system. Here, I'm actually in the nervous system. I'm actually experiencing joy. I'm actually able to really regulate myself. I'm actually really able to calm myself because I'm sure I was probably anxious then as well. Like I try to really truly remember, I can remember what I thought was anxiety, perceived anxiety in high school, but I'm sure I was anxious then of the fear of, is this going to happen again? Am I going to get bullied again? What is today going to bring? What are the new obstacles that little Shaun has to face? So I think I was sort of setting the stage subconsciously to say, okay, this has got to be my life's work because this is something that I fear. And it's kind of like that Batman analogy, right? Where I remember watching the first Batman, as a side note, with Christian Bale, and he becomes Batman in that particular movie because he fears bats, right? And it's so interesting because the thing that I feared the most, anything that was physical, literally became my superpower.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's just like, wow. And that's a scary thing to do because I think as individuals, I'm sure you would agree, we don't always do things that we're good at. Like, who wants to do something they're not good at? We just shun away from it, right? Especially as we get older. It's otherwise like kind of like with all the snow on the ground as we both live in New England. It's like, well, if I've never gone skiing before, I'm not going to try now. I'm in my 40s per se, right? So, but I think then I knew I had to go down that path. And even at a young age, I just felt it in myself. I have to heal myself somehow. And then the proof really was that day, that moment when I'm in my dad's gym and I'm benching. It was a 45-pound plate. And I just remember, oh my God, like this is my calling. And so there were other things that sort of led me to that along the way. But that really set the stage early on for me.
I always say that our mess is our message. And I hate to call your childhood your mess, but it was messy, right? And I think
very messy, yes.
The gift that leads us to all have, whether it's, going through an addiction or health problems or divorce, whatever it is for you.
Yes.
I think the gift in it is that we really feel it. And we really understand it.
Yes.
And we can really relate at a deep level to other people going through the same thing. I think that's why there's a gift in there. I'm curious about the fact that, so you felt this in your body and you feel like you recognized at the time that this is great. I'm healing myself. I'm healing myself from physically, from my inability to do all the things I've wanted to do and protect myself from being bullied.
Correct.
When did you realize it was bigger than the physical? When did you realize that there was emotional work in there that had to be addressed and probably was as big as the hurdles in the physical sense?
So when I moved to, it's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. When I went to New York, I was 22 years old, fresh out of college. I moved in with my brother and a friend. I was living in Brooklyn. It was very exciting. And I moved to New York originally for big dreams. I wanted to write. I even wanted to act. And I remember, sort of taking a different path in the sense of I was helping a friend at the gym, and just the things that I learned in college. I wasn't certified at that moment, but the education I had in college, the education I had from my dad, I was helping this particular friend. And then what happened was, long story short, one of the gym managers came over to me and said, "Do you want a job?" And I thought, wow, I thought I was just going to do what any New Yorker does if they want to be an actor. Like I was just going to work in a restaurant and try to audition during the day and be very cliche for a while. And I thought, yeah, this could be really great, because obviously during this whole process, I was continuously still working out and healing myself and not understanding truly what anxiety was. I mean, if I'm being super transparent, and I want to be always to the listeners, I don't think I ever truly was experiencing depression during my childhood trauma. It was more just about anxiety for me personally. Later, which I'll get to in a moment, I realized that was repressed anger. I guess there was some true anxiety of what could happen next, but it was really just repressed anger I was experiencing. And anger and anxiety are really like one side of the coin. But long story short, I got hired as a personal trainer, certainly got certified, and was working with a client that I actually still work to today. She's my oldest client, and she's a therapist. And I'll keep her name confidential, but we've been together for 20 plus years.
Wow.
And I remember we were at the pull-up bar, and I was mustering up the energy and the courage, Marianne, to say to her, I don't feel like my authentic self. Like there's something that's going on inside of me that doesn't feel present. It's almost like sometimes when I speak, I feel sort of scared about maybe somebody's reaction or the outcome, but this is not my true authentic voice. But I didn't know what anxiety really was. I didn't know what it was. And I'm going to label it as anxiety because I think that's what it was at the time. And she said, do you want me to save you 5 years of therapy? Because I started to tell her a little bit about what was going on, which it's interesting because if I think about my success, that I say this humbly as a master trainer at this point in my career, I make it, of course, all about the client. I never make it about myself. I've had some clients along the way that have made it about me, which has been, if I have the time today to talk to you about it, I can tell you some really interesting stories, which have been very invaluable to my life. But this particular client was so generous to say, you need to get angry. This is sound like a lot of repressed anger. And she wasn't wrong. I had a lot of repressed anger for the things that happened to me. And there's other forms of childhood trauma too I'm happy to share about to help the listeners. And then she recommended a therapist to me, who ironically is also named Marianne, and who wrote the foreword to my latest book, Emotional Fitness. And so I went to go see Marianne, and that's when I started to realize that the physical is so important for my healing, but now I can label these emotions. I'm not anxious or I'm not angry, but I'm having these moments of anger and anxiety. And so now this is an opportunity to heal the emotional side of me with some guided work. And then how can I absolutely transfer that to the physical?
It's wild that you had her in your life and she pointed you in the right direction. I don't believe in coincidences. So I think that was another gift, right? Just sitting there waiting.
Absolute gift.
Waiting for you to be ready for it.
100%.
And you were. And I love the way you said, I don't have anxiety, and instead say, I was anxious, or I was anxious at that time.
Right. Yes.
Very specifically say it that way, right? Like, don't own it. It's not who you are. It's just something you have for a minute or whatever, however long. I love that.
Yes.
Also, it made me think about how I think the children that are being raised nowadays, I think, are being raised with more words, more language, more awareness, more emotional awareness. I'm sure yours are. I know my grandkids are, because I have a social worker as one of my daughters. So she's very, key to knowing some of this stuff too. But I think it's more widespread than just our kids, right? I think that we growing up didn't have the words.
Yes.
Nobody talked to us about these things. So I think that's a huge benefit. So you go on and you realize, gosh, I got to do the emotional work,
Right.
and you start down that journey.
And it's hard. I mean, Mary, it's the hardest work
Hmm.
there is, as you know. It is the
Hmm.
hardest work there is.
And were you able to sort of easily tap into the experiences, or did you have to do a lot of digging? Because I hear from people that are frustrated when they hear, just find the cause. Go back to
Right.
your 6 or 7 year old
Sure.
self and find the thing that gave you that messaging. And for a lot of people, I think they may not be able to find the exact thing. And I think some
Yeah.
struggle with that.
Yeah, I think for me, I think, I had at this point, I'm, 23, 24 years old. I'm seeing Marianne for the first time. It's my first form of therapy. A lot of my trauma was very compiled from 5 to about 12. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse as well. So there was a lot of things that were very piled up between, 5 and 11 for me,
Mm,
12 years old. And so I think there was so much repressed anger as well because it was an uncomfortable emotion for me. I was always a very gentle soul, I think, from the beginning. And I like what you said real quickly as a side note to say about, maybe, different generations, like my grandparents or my parents' generation versus my generation versus my kids' generation. It's much more
yeah.
accepted to be in therapy. I mean, my joke was in New York, if you didn't have a therapist, what's wrong with you, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so there's something shameful about therapy, of course. And now you're right, we have more language. I mean, the language I use with my girls is, they call it gentle parenting. And we didn't have that, of course, growing up. And I think parents, there are some very deviant parents out there, of course. They don't get free passes. But I think for the most part, parents are always trying their best. It's hard. And I have empathy for parents. And, I always say this if I'm working with a client or a patient in my own practice, we're not trying to ever demonize parents. Everyone's, with the hope, is trying to do their best. But I would see Marianne, and I would see Marianne, and it's about 45 minutes, hour long session. And then I would either sometimes walk home or I would try to schedule her where I could either walk home and really think about the things that she has given me, the advice she has given me, and how I can really transport myself back to really do the healing journey. Or I would take the subway back and I would take the subway home. And then what happened was I would journal and I would take out my MacBook or good old fashioned pen and paper if people still use those. And the subconscious is a funny thing, as you know, because I would think, okay, I'm upset about, this kickball story, let's say, that happened. And then it would take me off to something totally different.
Yeah.
And I would just let the subconscious go. So that was really healing. It's hard though, because it's important to feel. I think a lot of people have a very difficult time when they go back feeling. I think it's hard for people to feel because these are very painful moments,
Yeah.
of course, trapped in our subconscious, which we know is now trapped in the body. I'll say this, and I say this a lot, where emotions are not trapped in the brain or the mind, they're trapped in the
Yeah.
body, right? So that was really important for me to get out. But then what would happen was I'd have to remind myself, I'm not 6-year-old Shaun living in a 24-year-old body,
Hmm.
because that was really hard to make that transition, where sometimes it would be a bit OCD, where I would just want to keep working and working and working. And throughout the years being with Marianne, I see her much less now, but she'll still say to me, "You're the hardest worker in the room." And I say that humbly because it was something that I was very passionate about. And I wanted to heal myself. In other words, I wanted to be that parent to myself where, okay, these are things that I have to clean up to be my authentic self. And the authentic self is, of course, who I was before the trauma happened to me. But the authentic self is who I am now, presently. So it was really important to revisit 6, 7, 8-year-old Shaun, give little Shaun the credit and justice he deserves, but bring it back. So journaling really helped. And then just to make it full circle for you, but what happened also was, is as I got a bit more comfortable being on the path and not as maybe emotional, because sometimes I would leave her and just want to cry,
Mm.
or just feel so sad for myself, and just take these long walks home, and or sit on a park bench, and it's very poetic, and think about my childhood. But then what was happening was I would go to the gym, and I would go to this particular gym where people didn't know I was a trainer, like I didn't work there, for instance, and I would carve out the same corner, and I'd get all my weights that I loved, and I would think about the things that Marianne had told me. And I would I would make notes like on the subway to the gym. And I would probably tell you, I'd probably jot down 10 different lines. And I would focus on maybe all 10 in one workout or maybe five, and think about some of the advice she's given me and really run with it. And then during the workout, what would happen was I would feel strong in the workout. I would feel, again, the anxiety, which we know now is anger, start to release in my body. And the clarity would really come in, Marianne. And this is where things would get really interesting for me, because I would realize, okay, the root is, we'll take the kickball story. Okay, the root is, was a huge embarrassing moment for me, so shameful. Everyone called me a loser. for years subconsciously, of course, I'm going to think I'm a loser because
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little boy. I'm run by emotion. The prefrontal cortex isn't formed at 26, 27. And I had other teachers that were harsh. I mean, my kindergarten teacher prevented me from using a left-handed scissor, and I'm a left-handed guy. And so or I went to Hebrew school for 1 year, and there was this really pretty blonde girl sat next to me, and the Hebrew school teacher called me a bad Jewish person in front of everybody because I literally asked her for a pencil because I liked her, and I wanted. So I had some teachers that were also harsh, and so all that was coming out. So all these things kept coming out, and it was very healing. And so I realized, wait a minute, I can feel strong in my workout. I can create this release in my workout. I need to create some mantras for myself. I need to create sort of like, my own 10 commandments, these commandments for myself. And I can even, in the book, I chop them down to 5 and 5, but it's really important because I think all this stuff that happens to all of us, we all have a childhood for, whether it's, intentional or unintentional trauma from caregivers or parents or counselors or teachers. It's up to all of us now to do the work. And I knew I wanted to be a dad one day. I knew I wanted to be the best version of myself. I wanted to be my authentic self. I also knew in some ways, I think the subconsciously was, if I can heal myself, I can help others, as scary as it might have been at the time. It was almost like I had this responsibility in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said earlier, I mean, what you see isn't always what you get in life. Don't judge a book by its cover. Plenty of people would meet me and they're like, "Oh, you never had any problems, or
Yeah.
you always probably been good at fitness, or you're probably." I used clients used to say to me, "I thought you were going to be so arrogant because you had muscles or whatever," and I'm
Yes.
like, "Really?" Because or whatever. I mean, I would get typecast as Greek or Jewish or Italian, as just sort of this macho, unfeeling, unavailable,
Yes.
not vulnerable type of person. I'm anything but. And of course, they get to know me, and that changes.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's also really important, as scary as it is, as comfortable as it may seem, if you're thinking about it and you're not sure if you can get on the path or not. I keep saying this. I encourage everybody to do so because anxiety is not comfortable. Anger is not comfortable, even though it feels like relief. Depression is not comfortable. These are all huge distractions, and they get comfortable because those are, again, our safe zones. That's where we feel safe. But it's so amazing if you can just go to the other side of the lake and dip your toe in and just see what that feels like. Because I guarantee it, for everybody, as hard as it may seem at first, I'm living proof that it's more than rewarding.
Mm-hmm. I agree with all of that. Something you said that I loved so much, well, all of it, but there was a piece that really jumped out at me because what you actually did, whether you knew it or not, is you went to something that made you feel strong and confident
Yes.
while you processing that all those negative emotions. And you really turned that around, right?
Yes.
And I think it's important that people hear, because not everybody's going to be wanting to be in a gym and not everybody's going to want to get into physical fitness like you do. And
Sure.
That's okay. We're not going to
That's
poo-poo
okay.
that. Maybe you feel confident dancing. Maybe you feel confident singing. Maybe you feel confident on a hike in the woods, whatever it is. I think I want to make sure the message there is you can do the work and sort of reprocess some of those negative emotions or experiences. Do it in a setting that makes you feel confident, makes you feel strong, makes you feel the best, whatever that looks like.
Yes.
And I think sort of combining those two activities is probably a much more powerful situation than just reprocessing or looking at those feelings or just working. And I don't mean to say just, but you know what I mean? Separately.
Well, of course. Absolutely.
Working on the thing. I think putting them together was the genius. I think working on that stuff together is what made it so powerful.
And for my wife, it was dance, right? I mean, like
right.
For her, that was her healing, was dance. So I love what you're saying. And in emotional fitness, I talk about it's body weight exercises because we're talking about, again, you versus you. And so I want people to be in their bodies. I mean, I keep saying this as well. My message is for people to feel empowered in their bodies. Forget aesthetics. That should be last on the list. So it's really all about how does, again, any form of movement make you feel? And if you feel strong in your workouts, and it doesn't have to be a Barry boot camp workout, it doesn't have to be CrossFit, it doesn't have to be anything super intense. It could be just, doing some box squats on a chair when you're just, getting up and down, or, holding a plank position or standing on one leg, just any form of movement. The biggest takeaway I want the listeners to understand is because talk therapy is amazing and saved me in many ways. And I'm so indebted to Marianne. And I know she would agree also when I say this, to say that, again, because emotions reside in the body, we have to release those emotions in the body. So journaling is amazing and meditation is amazing. And that is, I just think, part one. Part two would be, okay, can I release these stored emotions in the body, these stored memories in the body? I think something universal that we all could talk about would be like if you get a massage, right? And someone's like, they say the masseuse is giving you a massage and they're around your neck and they say, oh my goodness, you're so tight. And maybe it's a safe thing to say, like, oh, really, work is really hard. Like, I get it, because that's a safe thing because we carry stress, let's say, in our upper shoulders where the upper trapezius is and the scalenes, which are your neck muscles. Okay, that's a safe thing to say, right? But that's just a very small microcosm. And
Right.
so I know it's a very somatic way of thinking. It's a holistic way of thinking. But as I started doing the research of emotional fitness and what I experienced in myself, like if I was upset with a teacher who was female, right, for instance, that's my left side. If
Mm.
I'm stressed with, let's say, or upset with the counselor who embarrassed me when I was, a young boy in camp, that's my right side because he was male. I could feel that in my body. I could feel the indifference. Now, I'm a lefty in everything I do. I'm a left-handed person. I'm a left-dominant person, as I mentioned. But I found it really interesting in my work when I was healing myself, depending on if it was female or male, that type of energy, I was feeling that in my body too.
That's so interesting. I actually have not heard that before, that
Yeah.
you could really identify the different places you felt it depending on what it was.
Absolutely. And to take it one step further, where certain other muscles carry different emotions, like your calves, for instance, really hold on to anger. Your psoas, where your hip flexor is a very emotionally driven muscle. I mean, it's really interesting. The body keeps the score.
Mm.
I mean, the body, it really is. And it's fascinating because I'll say to clients, okay, we're going to do 50 push-ups, let's say in a minute, right? And they'll do the 50 push-ups in a minute. If someone is very obviously fit. But if I said to that particular person, okay, I'm going to put a minute on the clock. Let's see how many push-ups you can do. We're not always getting to 50.
Mm.
And it's the journey versus the destination, meaning it's the mind and body connection. The mind gives out way before the body does, way before. It's so fascinating to me. So again, if we can train the mind, it can be, again, our biggest asset. If it could be our biggest fan, there is literally, Marianne, no turning back. And that's been also my work in this also. It's not even just about mental toughness. It's about really healing yourself when things get hard,
Mm.
right? When things get hard, and then preparing yourself because life will throw challenges at you. There's always going to be triggers. The work is always ongoing. So yes, I healed myself as a child, but what happens as an adult? Let's say the girls have a bad day. How do I deal with that? Or if a client has a bad day, how do I deal with that? I mean, again, the nervous system is always adjusting. The nervous system is always listening. And so if you can train your vagus nerve and your nervous system and your body to be your biggest asset, again, there is no turning back. It is literally a superpower.
Mm. What do you think was harder, to sort of rewire that mindset and work on the emotional stuff, or the actual physical, when you go back to the physical, because you truly had physical limitations you had to overcome. So, which anyone could picture as a very difficult challenge, right?
Yes.
What do you think was more difficult?
Oh, it's a great question. I think in the beginning, it was the mind body connection at first, like learning how to do a proper push up. Like, for instance, I tell the story as well on my tour, which I didn't tell you guys in December. But I remember at that point of my physical fitness career, really being proud aesthetically of how I looked, coming from, again, my childhood, and thought, again, I'm really talented in what I'm doing, and my clients are really giving me great feedback. And so I went to this course, and it was part of a workshop for continuing education. This is back in 2009, 2010. And I went in there and I thought I was doing just great push-ups. Like I thought my form was amazing. And I thought, oh my God, there was like a room full of 200 people. And at the time, the instructor came over and literally like stopped the presses and made, I don't want to say a mockery
Mm.
of me, but he said, this is basically how you're not supposed to do it. And my neutral spine was off, meaning if you can picture it, I'm doing a push-up. All the listeners can picture what a push-up looks like. And I had my hips too low. So my upper back was higher than my glutes and my hips. And he kept trying to get my hips to come up, and I just couldn't do it. I was back to, again, that gross motor skill ability. Like I wanted to do it, but my body
Mm.
wouldn't let me do it. And I thought I was done with all that. And it was pretty embarrassing. And I had to, again, sort of, suck it up with my ego. But I promised myself something, that I was going to master that neutral spine. Not only that at that point, I had written articles. My first article at the time was it's no longer exists, but it was a company called Boomer Living, and they had a website called boomerliving.com. And I wrote an article for heart disease for if someone had quadruple bypass or any kind of bypass. This was a post-op workout. And I was proud of that. But, so I was starting to dip my toes into, again, writing, and which has always been a passion of mine, and English major as well. So it was good I was putting that to use. But long story short, I promised myself, just like I did with everything else leading up to this moment in my life physically, I would master it. And I'm humbly going to tell you, I did. And not only that, I wrote 2 push-up books about it. And then now I teach a course with other, personal trainers teaching my course. So taking my course. And so the point is, that was one part of it physically that I thought I had nailed, that I had to overcome. I think the bigger part for me, though, was the emotional, because I had to learn early on that trauma is trauma, meaning that I'm always going to experience some part of it. I'm never going to know when it's going to come back. You never know when you're going to get triggered. It could be a song, could be a movie, something somebody said. I had to realize that the trauma that I'd been through, again, doesn't define me like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But it's always kind of going to be there a little bit on my shoulder. The difference is that I get better about listening to it or not. I get better about being, again, my present authentic self. And when I do get triggered, instead of, oh God, why me? Or this is super painful, it's an opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity, again, to be further along in my healing. So I think if I had to answer that, I'd say a little bit of both, but more the emotional.
That makes total sense to me, because the physical, to me, it's one and done. I know it's not one, but I mean, you get it done. You can overcome it and beat it, and you're good. You now mastered the push-up. But the mental stuff just, it does creep back in. There isn't an end. You can just learn how to manage it better, to process it better, to understand it better, to put different lenses of perspective on it. Doesn't really go away, really. It's there in and out your life, I think, forever. Not as hurtful, not as all-encompassing, but I don't know if it ever really goes away, I guess, from my experience.
I agree. And one thing that really helped me was, and I say this as well in the book, where all roads, in my opinion, lead back to unconditional love. So for years, I thought about, little Shaun, and I'm in New York, and I'm feeling much more confident than I did as a little kid. And aesthetically speaking, I'm proud of my body, and feel like at the time, I was really proud of my career. A lot of things were going well for me. It was a good life when I first moved to New York, but yet I had obviously the trauma to clean up. But the reason why I bring all that up is to say that even though, again, that trauma was there, I also was agreeing with everybody. I also was literally agreeing with the counselor called me a loser, or those former teachers or counselors. It was almost like they were right. I don't really want anything to do with little Shaun. Let's just put little Shaun over here. In fact, he is a loser. He has all those things everyone said. For years, I thought that way. And then it wasn't until when I was in the process of writing Emotional Fitness and I realized, well, I mean, this is so obvious to me. Little Shaun brought me here. I mean, he's not what everybody said. And then I do this practice with my clients this day when we do emotional fitness work. And I'll say, we're going to take a piece of paper and we're going to draw a straight line down the paper. On the left side of the paper, I want you to write about all the characteristics that make you up who you are, not your accomplishments, but just like who you are. Like if I had to start, I'd say I'm an empath, or, I feel like I'm kind, things like that. And the other side, I want you to write down everything that you were taught by anybody, counselor, caregiver, parent, you name it. They are always very different, which I find fascinating because, again, as a little person, I have all these exhibits. I could say, well, I am a loser because I'm being bullied today, and the camp counselor called me a loser, and my kindergarten teacher was mean to me, and whatever. I mean, I have all these examples, right? I could say, so they have to be right. They have to be right. I don't know if I can really love myself because I'm all these things. I'm unlovable. And I think that's when vulnerability really creeps in, right? Because I'm seeing a lot of things that are very vulnerable. And I feel like a lot of people would say, oh my God, I could never admit that about myself because if I do, I'm not going to be lovable. They're going to judge me. And that's the opposite. Vulnerability leads to invincibility. So that was so helpful for me, Marianne. When I go back and I think about little Shaun, I'm like, that dude was a rock star. He had to suffer so much unspeakable trauma. And here he is. I mean, he's a badass, part of my language. And he dealt with shame. I mean, I think shame is the one of the cruelest emotions, maybe the cruelest emotion, at least in my opinion, that anyone can really suffer from, and especially if it's chronic. And shame is really, I mean, it's cruel and it's debilitating. And little Shaun suffered with really chronic shame. And man, he used that as a belief system and he still survived. So that's how I started thinking about myself. Instead of, oh, he's such a loser, he can't kick a ball. How could he win Best of Brooklyn? He can't even kick a ball. Complete opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so wild how changing the perspective really does. It can change
Yeah.
really everything. But I think it's important to know that it takes practice.
Hmm.
It doesn't, like, you don't say it once and then you fully believe it and
No.
then you're on, it's all over. But I think you can continually practice that. And like any other thing you're trying to change, the more you do it, the more evidence you'll find to support it. So I'm sure once you started shifting that perspective,
Yes.
it was easy to then go back and find circumstances that showed up that matched the newer perspective. So
Exactly.
that's part of the work, right? Is finding the evidence that you probably never looked at before. So,
Yes.
so interesting. I'm curious, you said you do that exercise with some of your clients when
Hmm.
you're doing the emotional fitness work.
Hmm.
So today you're doing both physical coaching
Yes.
and emotional fitness coaching.
Yes.
Is it like a 50-50, 60-40? This is just Marianne
Yeah.
being
Yeah. I
curious.
love that Marianne's
How's
curious.
that work?
Get as serious as you want, Marianne. Okay, so everybody's different. I would say that I have clients, obviously, I've been with for years, decades even, and I have clients who are very new. And so it's all about what the client wants, number one. Certain clients are not comfortable, again, being vulnerable, and they may want to do the work, and it's hard. And I'm very, of
Mm,
course, empathetic and sympathetic to that. So for clients who want to do emotional fitness, but they're having a very hard time with it, I go really easy, obviously, and I follow their lead. Normally what happens is, again, when you're talking to a client, we get on a call and I'll say, how are you doing, how's your week been? That really, again, tells me a lot, right? I'm also trained to know body language, and so if we're shrugging our shoulders, if we're rounding our spine, if we're defensive and crossing our arms, all those are little
yeah.
tells as well. Of course, that's the obvious. So for certain people, they're very open to do it. And so if the clients who are very open to do it, we feel like it's really helping them, obviously, I'll go 50-50, maybe 60-40. I have certain clients that want the 100 time just emotional fitness, and we do literally
Wow.
100% talk. So it's all, and I am
Wow.
CBT certified. So it's almost like a CBT type of workout,
It's
which
wild.
is great. And
Yeah.
they feel better emotionally. They feel better physically. It goes hand in hand. So everybody's a little different depending on their goals. I think the biggest thing is, and this goes back to, again, what we were talking about before prior, especially for my work right now, it's really changing belief systems. Because when we're talking about
Mm,
belief systems, they're taught, right? And we all have a childhood, so everything is taught. So also with food, I mean, food is a big part, again, of the fitness world. And so how a client has a relationship with food, who they are presently, whether they're a teenager. My youngest client's a teenager. My oldest client's in their 90s. So it's a big span of people, of course, age-wise, which is great. But the point is, how they view food is normally very different from how their parents viewed food and how they were taught to view
mm,
food, which is really interesting. And so I find that also really, really telling, because these are also belief systems that we're taught. And so if you think about the belief systems that were taught to yourself, do they align right now with who you are presently? Because again, when we talk about self-worth, and I talk a lot about self-worth, of course, in emotional fitness, self-worth, the true definition of self-worth is, again, not what's in your bank account, not the car you drive, and not where you live. It's truly, and this is what Webster's defines it as well, it's truly how you treat yourself and how you treat others. That's the true
mm.
definition of self-worth. But are you treating yourself from your belief systems or from what you were taught? It's really interesting because they also don't align. Very seldom do they align.
That makes sense.
If you think about your relationship with food, and food is very cultural, of course. Like, okay, well, I was taught it's very cultural. Depending on religion you are, or where you grew up, or what culture you come from. There's a very big cultural, religious aspect to all this as well. But I will challenge clients constantly as they get a bit more open with me and feel braver to share some of their trauma or not, what other stresses they have as well. Is this your belief system, or is it a belief system that you were taught?
Mm,
Yeah.
love that. Well, I want to touch on it just because we started to touch on it before we were recording, and
Hmm.
I was honest with you in that I said, so you told me that you're doing all of your coaching, whatever kind of coaching, remotely, virtually.
Yes. Correct.
And I was a little bit fascinated by that. I
Yeah.
guess I kind of took a step back from
Yeah.
that because, especially from the physical fitness side of things,
Hmm.
being a personal coach to somebody or personal trainer is probably the right word.
Sure.
my immediate thought was, well, how can that work
Right.
really remotely?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sure,
Mm-hmm.
you could sort of do it, but really.
Right.
And so you said, I'm 100% virtual and it does work. And
Yeah.
you can fill in the blanks here and tell us why, but I thought it worth bringing up because
Yes.
if I thought that, other people probably think that as well.
Sure.
So tell us why we're wrong to
Okay.
think,
Okay.
reset our
I would
perspective.
love it's a great
the,
good.
yeah, go ahead.
Well,
That
no,
virtual is just as good as being together
and I
with
think it
someone.
is just as good. And I'm really proud that, again, you brought it up because I think a lot of people are probably curious why. So let's just go back for a moment. The godfather of fitness, one of them anyway, is Jack LaLanne. Jack LaLanne was the first mainstream person to have a fitness show. He was really the first virtual personal trainer because you would tune in Jack LaLanne's show and he would literally, demonstrate exercises and you would follow. We fast forward to the 80s. We have people like Jane Fonda, Richard Simmons, again, very famous people. Again, these are the first personal trainers who were teaching. Now it's a
It's
group
true.
setting, but that helps. Then COVID happens, right? So let's fast forward a little bit more. And everything is shut down. I'm living in Brooklyn at the time. Everything is shut down. Before COVID happened, I had two clients that were remote. They both lived in China. They both lived in Hong Kong. And so at that moment, I was very, again, well versed with it. I was very confident about it. It has to work for a couple of reasons. One, you have to be a skilled personal trainer to do it. So I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say this. I don't think every personal trainer is equipped to do it. That's number one. You have to be, number one, able to give a lot of energy. To be a very, I think, successful personal trainer, you're giving a lot of energy. Now, that doesn't mean you have to yell and scream. It just means that you have to give a lot of energy when it comes to being empathetic, really listening to the client, really giving the client what they want, having that connection, understanding that things are somatic, like we keep talking about. That all takes a lot of energy. Even listening and talking takes a lot of energy. So that's number one. Number two, you have to have a trained eye. If you are a good personal trainer, this is my belief system here when I tell you this. I've been doing it for 23 years almost. Form matters. For the obvious. You want to do things with great form. You don't want to compensate. I am a huge believer in alignment. I'm a huge believer in corrective exercise. Overactive muscles, meaning very tight muscles. Underactive muscles, which are very weak muscles. A person who's a lefty versus a righty, all these things really matter. And so you have to have a skilled eye. Can you see things again over the screen, whether you're using an iPad, a phone, or a MacBook, or whatever you have, some sort of desktop? So all that, I just want to say, really matters. Okay. The other element in all this is that when you get on the screen with somebody, and I had a couple of new people actually start this month, which is great. It's very important to understand that everybody wants to do their best here. When you're a personal trainer and you have somebody show up, they want to do their best. Everybody wants the greater cause, right? Everybody, whether the goal is to lose weight or build muscle or feel better emotionally, both parties want that. So it's really important to connect with somebody, I believe, emotionally from the start, because it's all about one simple thing: trust.
Mm.
It's why we make any choice every day. Like, for instance, when I was in Brooklyn, there were many different coffee shops. I love coffee. I love cold brew. Shouldn't have too much, but I love it. And there's a reason why you may go to Starbucks versus Dunkin', or you may go to a mom and pop place versus something more mainstream. And you can say, well, I like the way Dunkin' Donuts coffee, or Dunkin' is now it's called, tastes, or I like the way Starbucks tastes. Okay, all that is probably true too. But every decision we make is usually in the subconscious and usually emotionally based. So that you're trusting, let's say, like if I have, I like Mac products, I'm trusting a Mac product versus an IBM, right? There's a trust there. There's a decision and a trust in all this. So that the trust has to happen. Trust, though, is earned, not given. So if you're a personal trainer, you have to really give a great session and earn that person's trust. So what I like to do is, if somebody's a little bit dubious about, well, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see everything, and can you really see the alignment? And I don't know, like, are you really able to really, match again what I need emotionally and physically when you're like coming through virtually? The answer to that is yes. And here's how it starts for me personally. If I'm with somebody and they've never worked out before in their life, we sit down and I basically have a questionnaire that I ask people, not cookie cutter, but it's basically a questionnaire that I would say, what's your, give me your background on fitness, the basics things, any prior, injuries or not, any present injuries, all the things that anybody should ask anyway, especially if you're in person. Okay, from there, I have that individual stand up and I go through posture because that is the first building block of any fitness routine, your posture. your posture. The reason why is stability, again, is the first building block. So if you are not stable in certain areas, we have no business creating strength there. And so I will take, if the client is comfortable, and usually are, because if not, we're going to post it on social media, I will take different shots of their posture over the phone, and then I'll send it to them, and then we go through it together to look at their posture. And I'll say, I want you to look at your left shoulder versus your right shoulder, your left hip versus your right hip. So we go over the posture, and already right there, I'm building trust because we're talking about the stability again. And I want them to be in their body. From there, I go through simple exercises that are not necessarily basic, and nothing is cookie cutter because everybody has an individual routine based upon their needs. But I will start with 2 or 3 exercises. I don't want to overwhelm, but we'll go over 2 or 3 exercises that I think they need. Let's say somebody has really tight hips because they sit a lot all day. I'll go through some, again, movements that I think are appropriate for them based on their fitness abilities at that moment. We'll go through just 2. Then I resend the photos, and we'll look at the photos, and we'll go over alignment. We'll go through the things they did wrong or didn't do wrong. I will literally say to them why, if they're doing something that's really inappropriate, where they're shifting their weight to one side or they're using a different muscle group they shouldn't, we'll stop. I'll demonstrate. I'll make sure that they understand the correct form, and we'll go back to it. And you may say, well, what if you're somebody who's listening, like, well, that seems overwhelming. I don't know what to look for. If you're showing me photos, that might seem so overwhelming. Could we do that at the end of the session? Or I don't want to do that at all. I have clients that don't really like photos. They like to keep going. So with that, we stop. Either I demo myself, or what I'll do is we'll talk it over. And I'll literally, again, never break eye contact with them. And we'll talk about why it didn't feel right and what emotionally they need in that moment and what I can do to better serve them. It's all about communication. For most of my clients, I would tell you, I've never met them in person. Yes, I've had clients that I started in 2003 as a personal trainer, but I have clients that when I moved to Connecticut, they're first timers. I've never moved them. I had this wonderful space. I think they'd never come because they're all over the country. I have clients all over California, Illinois, Minnesota, New York, of course, Florida, you name it. But the point is that they have got to feel comfortable. And especially in the very beginning, I'll say to them, do you not feel comfortable? Do you have any questions on any of the forum? There are no, again, bad questions. I want to make sure that you are understanding everything I'm saying. And I'm always taking notes. So, I'll hold this up afar so, people can see, but I'm taking notes, when it comes to, again, any particular client. And then what I'll do is after the session, I'll send them photos of the session labeled with the exercises about what to do and what not to do. I'll send them some friendly reminders that are usually anywhere between 8 to 10 bullets. And then I'll send them a paragraph of the things that they did really well, the things that, again, they're continuously need to work on this week, like for homework, and the things that I would like to work on for the entire month. So I'm almost like a chess master because I'm thinking about the next steps per se, right? Yeah. And the fact that I have the notes in a notebook, I send everything over electronically to them, but we keep track of everything. We're very meticulous. And I have clients that I see multiple times a week. I even have clients I see, a couple times a month. I'm happy to see everybody in any variety. But the point is that and I said this to you off the air, and I'll say it on the air as well. I never want anybody to ever feel cheated that I'm not in the room with them. I know I can't virtually, I know I can't maybe give somebody a hug at the end of the session or high five them or something. But even though I'm virtual, I really pride myself on not missing any form of alignment or any inefficient movement. I want to feel always that I'm in the room with them, and I want them to feel the same thing. Because I think for a lot of times I used to see it too, Marianne, where I'd be at commercial gyms and I would just be doing my own workout when I was doing the work with, in my head for Marianne. I would see personal trainers, not to demonize, but I feel like I kind of want to maybe anyway here. I would see personal trainers on their phones, looking around. I mean, people are savvy. If you're not interested and you don't care, and it's expensive, your clients are going to know right away. And when I teach other personal trainers through the National Academy of Sports Medicine through my push-up course, and we're emailing and we're corresponding about, the book, or if they have any questions on the outline or anything I give them, I always say the same thing to them. And I usually keep the same tagline to all of them, which is, you must care. If you don't care, please do yourself a favor and get out of the industry, because it only hurts me. It hurts everyone else. You have to care. And there's going to be bad everything. There's going to be bad doctors and bad lawyers and all those other things in life, as you know, but you must care.
I love that. And, I was thinking as you were talking that for so many people that have not had a great relationship with fitness for their whole life, the thought of getting a personal trainer can be very intimidating. And so on that note, I think doing it virtually might actually seem a little bit less intimidating. I don't know. I'm thinking that through as you explained it, because
I think it
you're
does.
not
Yeah.
out there with everyone. You're not, there's a little bit of distance. I don't know. It just felt like maybe it would be just a little bit less intimidating for that type of person. But
Oh, I agree. I agree because I think it's also very scary to move your body in front of other people.
mm-hmm,
Absolutely. And obviously, I know from experience. So,
mm-hmm.
yes, I think you're absolutely right on that. 100%.
Love that. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Of
I want to
course.
ask you two more questions. So the
Please.
first one is, what didn't we talk about that's in Emotional Fitness, your latest
Okay.
book, that you want to make sure people hear?
Okay, great question. I mean, I know we covered a lot already today. I think the biggest message I can give anybody who's listening right now, and we're talking about, again, midlife, right? I mean, this is what it's all about. It's never too late.
Mm,
I mean, I keep repositioning myself as a child, and I'm thinking about myself through the positive lens and all the attributes that little Shaun had to bring me here now. It's never too late. And I think for a lot of people, they think, oh, I would never want to go to therapy because it's too scary, or maybe it's too expensive, or can it really help? And it doesn't have to even be therapy. It could even just be trusting somebody that, again, is a family member or friend. And you'd be surprised. I mean, even just sharing something about you that you don't think is lovable is a really important part of your healing.
mm,
I think shame holds us down for what it is. Well, I couldn't kick a ball, so there's shame. No, instead, it's become invincible to me at this point. It's become such a superpower as well, like I talked about earlier. So that would be number one as well. And then number two would be believe in yourself and trust yourself. There's 5 master mantras in the book. And I think it's really the belief in yourself that you can do hard things. I think for
mm,
a lot of us, if somebody has hurt us, we want that person to say they're sorry, or we want revenge. And, everybody has my empathy and sympathy, of course. But it's a disservice if you don't allow yourself to heal yourself. And we talked a lot about trauma today too, and I'll say this as well in the book. Trauma doesn't have to be the most unspeakable things. It could be, if it's emotional trauma from your childhood, it could be an emotional need that you didn't get. I know you're a wonderful grandmother, and I like to think I'm a great dad. But part of that is that I allow my kids to feel any emotion they need to feel, and then I validate their emotions. I mean,
mm,
children need that. They need emotional validation, and they need proper attention.
mm-hmm,
Even if you were ignored, I have plenty of clients that will tell me they were ignored by their parents, or even more feral per se. I mean, that's trauma. Neglect is trauma.
mm-hmm.
That's trauma too. And again, like we keep talking about, you're not, again, defined by that trauma, but it is your job. It is your job now if you are willing to heal yourself. So I'll say to this particular listener, it doesn't have to be therapy. It could just be journaling. It doesn't have to be an intense workout with weights. It could be just, again, a couple planks against the wall to release what's ever stored in your body. In other words, a little bit does go a long way. As you mentioned earlier, it is ongoing. You don't have to, per se, build Rome in a day, but you just want to take these minor steps to lead to something bigger. And then I know I said this earlier too, but remembering your belief systems versus what you were taught. Who are you? The challenge of who are you? Not who you were as a child even, but who are you? Whatever age you are now listening, how would you define yourself? Again, not by, again, your car or your house or anything like that. Those are frivolous things, but who are you as a person? How would you describe yourself? What are your own attributes? And emotionally attached to those instead of what you were taught.
Just to bring two of those thoughts together that you just said, you
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm a great grandmother, not a great grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
but a great
No,
grandmother.
a wonderful grandmother. Yes, yes.
But
You're
also
still very young.
that I'm good with the children as far as helping them with their emotions and stuff. I just want to say, but though, to your point about it's never too late, I wasn't always that way as a parent.
Mm,
So, but I don't hold on to shame around that because I've
mm-hmm.
processed those things.
There you
And,
go.
I love the saying, the Maya Angelou saying that, we do the best we can until we know more and then we do better. And I think it's never too late to do better.
Yes.
And once we heal ourselves and we learn more, we can then pass that on, whether it's to our next generation or to those around us. But it's never too late to continue to grow and to change things that way. So I think it's important to note
Yes.
that.
Agreed.
I was gonna wrap with my famous, quote unquote, famous question of if there was only one message, because we're message in the middle,
Yes.
but you just dumped such lovely messages right
Oh,
there from the book that I don't know if there's any one last message. I'll ask if somebody's only taking away one
yes.
message from this
Yes.
show, What would it be?
Self-love. No doubt. Self-love. And it seems so simple, doesn't it? Like the way you love your grandchildren, the way you love your children. And I'm not saying this to you personally, but can you love yourself the same way? I mean, I feel like we're
Yeah.
conditioned not to, just given our childhoods. And again, parents do the best they can. Absolutely. And I'm sure that my hope is that my children are better parents than I was. And
Yeah.
that's the hope anyway. Every generation, we keep getting better and better.
Yes.
But self-love, unconditional love, all roads lead back to unconditional love. My big ask for the viewers and listeners would be to do something kind for yourself every day. It doesn't have to be like a spa day or anything like that. It could just be take out a couple minutes, do something that's enjoyable to you. Listen to that song that gives you joy. Spend a couple minutes by yourself in solitude, thinking about, everything you're thankful for. Just something to give back to yourself. Love yourself especially when life gets tough. I mean, if you're going through something that's very traumatic or not, just the everyday stresses of life, continue to love yourself along the way. It is everything. Again, it's you versus you in this life.
Yes.
It's like my girls love Wicked, right? And everyone loves Wicked and it's so great. And who doesn't, right? I mean, I'm singing the song too, I'm going to admit to you. But girl does. But the point is, it's like that old Wizard of Oz. When you pull back the curtain, is it the Wizard of Oz? No, it's not. It's you.
Yeah.
We keep saying it. You're not the trauma. You're not all those negative things that happen to you. You're also not all the positive things that happen to you either.
Right.
No, it's you versus you. It's all about your own self-worth. So that would be my big message. Love yourself unconditionally, please.
Love it. Love it. Where do you want to send people to find you?
I appreciate that. So they can find me at zetlinfitness.com. So ZETLIN fitness.com. The best way.
And we will pop that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. What a great conversation.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you. Honored.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Message in the Middle. I hope you found something in this conversation that reminded you that you're not alone and that midlife isn't about winding down. It's about waking up. You're not done. You're just becoming. If this episode speaks to you at all, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And if you're enjoying the show, I'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to leave a review. It really helps other women find this community and this podcast. Until next time, take care of yourself.